we see where to bring the petrol. Someone will be back, start the battle. Living in the shop, we told me we said, but we've got a car, we're back in the battle.
Hello friends, welcome back to the show. I'm Li Ying. We continue sharing with you some amazing Shanghai stories. We're very glad to have Mike Hurt with us today. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
That's quite right.
So Mike, could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Okay, by day I teach mathematics, by night I do some comedy. In between I do music. I've been here in Shanghai for close to 12 years. Been involved in both the music and the comedy scenes. Sometimes at the same time, but now just mostly only doing comedy.
Yeah, I see. And you did tell me that you were also involved in some private tutoring business at some point, right?
Yeah, I did that for a bit. Just took some time out from doing the teaching. Just felt like I needed a change from the school that I was working at. Tried it out. Kind of realised this maybe wasn't quite the sort of industry I wanted to sort of go into. It was a bit too unsociable, a bit too seasonal for me. So I just went back to kind of just get the regular sort of like daytime sort of hours and have a bit more of a better work-life balance.
Yeah, I see. And where are you from originally?
I am from a town called East Kilbride, which is just 8 miles south of Glasgow, in Scotland. So this is probably why you might not, people listening might struggle to understand what I'm saying. So
I'm perfectly okay with it.
Yeah, well, I have been here. It's sort of developed this sort of weird Americanized version of the way that I speak. So people from Glasgow will just be looking at this thinking, you're not fucking Glaswegians. Are we allowed to swear?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, okay. So there's no like bleeps that come into it. The odd swear. I'm even drinking Scottish beer as well. Like,
I didn't even know that.
Product placement. You get everything on the LY show.
Exactly. That was a surprise, actually. Yeah. Okay. By the way, how I got that beer? I went to a supermarket and I was not allowed to go in because I was not wearing a mask, and the staff got me this, so that was pretty impressive. Great service. Yeah.
Did you tell them it was because a Scottish person was here?
I didn't.
It seems like a very specific beer to go for. I would have assumed, or maybe they went for the one that they thought, okay, we can make you pay more for this.
Speaking of that, did you try to find, or have you been trying to find a lot of like imported stuff from your country?
Not necessarily, but there is a Scottish WeChat group. It's called the Young Scottish Fleeto, which to translate for people, Fleeto is a word for a young team. Translate again, gang of youths who kind of go around stabbing each other. So we've called ourselves the Young Scottish Fleeto, and basically we just talk about like things like beer and Scottish soft drinks and bacon, and basically talking about things that we're all homesick about. It's full of people who try to ham up their Scottishness a little bit too much, but it's kind of like, yeah, they're nice enough. So and to answer the question directly, do I try to source Scottish products here? Not really. You can get some of these things, like this is just recent, Brewdog's around, but you know, most things, if we're really looking for like deep fried heroin, I don't think we're going to find it anywhere here. So
all right,
maybe in the border with North Korea.
Wow. Yeah. So speaking of like Scotland, let's talk about like what brought you here in the first place.
Well, I trained as a maths teacher in Scotland, and like what happens when you qualify as a teacher, the Scottish government give you your first job just like that. So that's basically like a sort of like full-time job, but you're still sort of in probation, so you're still learning and you're still not yet fully qualified. But after that year's up, you have to find your own permanent job. So I had a friend who was already working in Shanghai at the school that I'm at, and I just was coming to visit her anyway, and just asked her to see if she could hook me up with an interview. Well, during the visit, I interviewed okay. I didn't really expect there to be an actual interview or even a vacancy, so got the job, and basically have been here ever since. So that was 2008.
That was 12 years ago, and you were only 24.
Yes, I know this is what happens when you've been as a Scottish person being in Shanghai for 12 years. You rapidly deteriorate. You know, it's a real sort of exponential model that accelerates faster than the coronavirus.
So was it Shanghai or was it just you?
I think it's a combination of the two of them, to be honest. It's a match made in hell.
All right. So, wow, 12 years continuously in Shanghai.
Yes, I've never lived in any other part of China or any other country. I know of many people who have come and gone, kind of literally in that sense where they've left and come back to Shanghai. But yeah, like I think I came at a time just immediately after I arrived, the 2008 financial crisis hit. And so in China, and especially Shanghai, although we were affected, we sort of missed the worst of it as well. And then it just became like Shanghai just became this boom of a place for loads of people to come to. I've seen the place sort of emerge and develop a lot, and fell in love with the place, to be honest. I think I came at just at an era where there was still a little bit of opportunities for people to be the first to do something and stuff as well. Not that I was the first to do anything per se, but that's it's really kind of changed a lot in the time that I've been here. So yeah, like I think 12 years to have spent here is a kind of a testament to the city and the people, I think, here as well, Chinese and the expats.
So what's the biggest change?
The biggest change here in Shanghai, I think, to me, it's sort of like I personally believe I think there's a lot of like what's the word I'm looking for? Gentrification, which I think is really going on. Obviously, there's more money that's come into the city, and so they've brought up like the IAPM, if we can name drop this place, didn't exist when I was here. But I think that they've cleaned up a lot of places. That arguably that's for better or for worse, but I also feel that loads of sort of like traditional and historical places have sort of been torn down to make way for sort of like other shopping malls, which are very homogenized. And just like, you know, bottom floor is just full of like restaurants. The second floor, Starbucks, H&M, Uniqlo, etc., etc., etc. And they're all over the city. And, you know, stuff like that is kind of, yeah. And I think nowadays, you know, there's maybe less of a grey area there was than when it was when I arrived. There was a lot more kind of like, say, loopholes in being able to do things, which have now been closed. And yeah, so things have just become a lot more stricter and a lot more sort of, especially I say for foreigners, you know, you're what you can do has become a lot more restricted.
Is it change for the better or for the worse?
It just really depends on how you look at it. If you're sort of like one of these people like me who sort of thinks, oh, I love the days where you could kind of go out and there'd be like all these street food vendors in the place, and being able to sort of more or less do what you want because there was no rule explicitly saying that you couldn't do that, or whatever, numerous other things, then it's maybe changed for the worse. But then it's probably a lot more people being maybe brought out of poverty that maybe existed before here. There's a lot less scamming, there's a lot less sort of just maybe like opportunists trying to sort of take advantage of people and whatever. So in that way it's maybe for the better as well. It's certainly modernized a lot for the benefit of everybody as well. I say that as if when I arrived it was a bloody Victorian era, but you know, it's certain things are good, certain things, but I'd say it's, for me, it's largely sort of remained sort of consistent in terms of how I feel about it.
All right. If you could use 3 words to describe Shanghai, what these 3 words would be?
Innovative. It's certainly, so you got innovative, it's dynamic as well, and it's evolving.
It's evolving.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very big one.
Yeah, I would say very fast-paced in many regards like that as well. So
yeah, how do you compare the lifestyle here with your hometown?
Well, it's funny because whenever it marvels me how much when I go home things just do not change. if anything, every time I go home, it's kind of like, oh, walking through the local shopping mall in my own. We have one shopping mall, by the way. Just one. That's all you need. One. It's amazing when you walk through that, just how many places then end up just being closed down and stuff. How you bump into the same people doing the same thing. So it's almost in many ways like time has stood still, which is also not a good thing either. Not so much Glasgow. I'm going to spend more of my free time, arguably, in Glasgow than I do in my own hometown. Just really there. Stay at my mum's place, spend time with my mum and my sisters and friends that live there. But Glasgow was always fun. It was always a good place to be as well. Always had good live music, good comedy scenes and that as well, and just good nights out and stuff. It became a little bit more hipster, which I guess for a lot of big cities around the world is the case as well. Shanghai, thankfully, doesn't really have much of a hipster scene, to the best of my knowledge. I don't know if Yangpu has a hidden hipster section up by the Fudan University, but never say never,
Yeah. All right. So, when was the last time you were back in your home?
I came home actually just after the coronavirus broke out here. That was because I was on the phone to my mum, and she was just demanding that I come back, and just like come back. It was fairly relentless, and she was panicking, worrying, and I was just like to the wife, Lucy, hey, if you're listening, and so it was just like, yeah, we went back, and we didn't really put a time limit on how long we'd stay back, but it ended up being that we were back for 6 weeks, which included like 2 weeks in London as well, because my sister lives down there. So yeah, I left Scotland maybe like March 7th, sometime like that. And we can't go back because if I were to leave the country, I run the risk of not being allowed back in, because they've closed the borders to all foreigners, even if you got a valid permit and stuff. So yeah, that's. But I'd only been home at Christmas time. I wasn't planning at all to go home, so I certainly spent more time than I would have really needed to, just trying to do the job that I have here over Zoom with an 8-hour time difference. Try to do classes at 1 o'clock in the morning to Shanghai students at 9 a.m. local time. It was just, nah, I've got to come back.
Right. When you were back home, did your family or friends say things like, "Oh, you've changed"? Who's this person?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, like, I suppose I think of myself as actually having done all of my adult growing up here in China, because it was the first time that I kind of lived by myself. I mean, apart from doing 1 year living with my friends during my uni, when I was at university for 1 year only, other than that, I'd been living at home and had, I would say, sort of like a sheltered Catholic upbringing that was sort of a bit sort of like just taking everything that maybe my mum said at face value. But then when I came here, I had to be on a very steep learning curve, not just like adjusting to like culture and learning a new city and getting to know new people, but also kind of like at the time, I am completely inept at just basic sort of life skills, and I need to kind of get on with this fast, So in that way, I suppose maybe that's probably what's changed compared with when I left, because I left at the age of 24, and arguably that's still pretty young, and you've not really entered fully into adulthood unless you've had a lot more life experience, like you've had kids or you've sort of been in a career for longer. Whereas for me, I'd only really been in a career for 1 year by that point, still being a student up to the age of 23. So if you're a student, you're still, you like to believe that maybe you're an adult that knows it all and whatever, but at the same time, I didn't really have proper life experience, I would say. So yeah, that's maybe how I've changed, but nobody's really remarked upon that explicitly and said it as such,
All right. Okay. Let's talk about music.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I
always love to talk about music.
Yes. How long have you been doing music?
I got into music when I was like 10 years old. and then got into playing guitar when I was 12. So basically going to live music gigs and stuff, maybe from the age of 12 as well. I was too young to be going by myself, so I'd go with my uncle to go see shows. First gig was Oasis in
Awesome.
big country park outside Glasgow. And then more or less as soon as I came to Shanghai, just the first crowd of friends that I got in with, there was a guy who just happened to just be playing guitar at a friend's party, and we formed a band from there. And then from there that led to maybe like 3 or 4 other bands that I've been involved with. So it's always been a part of me, but it's just like maybe, I don't know if just like right now, just like the way that sort of the climate for music has changed a lot, where it's more difficult for bands to really make money from their music. So, you know, a lot of bands now, they sort of just focus on like live music to make their money from, and that leads to a lot of people just sort of on nostalgia tours. So like bands reforming and stuff just for the money, playing all their old hits and whatever. And it's just kind of like, I personally have never really felt that in the past decades there's been much innovation that's come through. But then that's also maybe me willfully kind of ignoring aspects of it as well. But yeah, been lifelong, mostly lifelong music fan since being about 10 or so.
You formed like 4 bands, and what are the status of these 4 bands at the moment?
All split up.
Is that inevitable for any band?
I think so, yeah. Especially here where there's such a transient nature of the expat community here. So the band that was my baby, my XXYY band, which I didn't want to end, but the bassist of that band had to go because he was a trailing spouse, and his wife was my colleague. She was off the job in Malaysia, so he had to go, and we didn't want to replace him. So therefore, it sort of led to a natural end for that. But yeah, like the Quarter Acre Band, the first one I was in was this angry Australian guy who just thought he was like, he thought he was Bono, and had this mad ego about him, and would kind of like just was obsessive to a really kind of dangerous level. So he just couldn't keep a hold of band members, and eventually I tolerated them enough because we were sort of besties at the time too, but eventually got to a stage where you're just obsessed with this band too much, and you keep going off and throwing mad tantrums if I break a string during band practice and stuff that really nobody should give a shit about. But so that came to an end then, because I joined another band, which led to that one's demise. Girls Like Mystery, which we were talking about my career earlier, just in private. Yeah, kind of more indie Britpop style music and stuff. But I wanted to do more stuff that was kind of more punky, hard rock, so that's where the XXYY band came from. Then I just took a break from doing music for about a year. Joined band Hogchoker, who are still going, but with totally different members, except for the singer. But yeah, when I got into doing comedy, I kind of thought I can't really do both of these together. It's just too, because they're nighttime activities.
Yes.
I was trying to do the business as well, which was using up a lot of my time that I would be able to spend at home with the wife and stuff, or be able to see friends. But if I'm doing the comedy, I'm doing the bands and stuff, and the band I wasn't really so blown away by. And again, it had a guy who was just quite obsessive, and a bit sort of taking the fun out of stuff because just taking it too seriously. So I opted to go for just kind of focusing on the comedy rather than doing music.
So when you were doing music, did you guys do live performances? I saw some of your music online.
Oh yeah. We like YYT, for example, the main venue. We played there a lot with all the bands, like loads, and we would play like, you had YYT at the time. It was YYT Mao Livehouse, Live Bar in Yampu District, 696 in Hongkou District, and then we'd also take the band to like other cities as well. So we did shows in like Beijing, Xi'an, Qingdao, Huainan in Anhui Province. I'm sure at one point I counted, Kunshan, random beer festival place, and Suzhou, places like that. So it was a lot of fun, like doing all that. But I guess just the difficulties with doing a band is when you've got to satisfy, let's say, at least 3 or 4 other people and be able to do things. So it's like, if you want to book a show, you have to sort of have universal agreement that everybody can actually do a show, you know, and just like there were definitely a lot more complications with doing music than were for doing comedy, not least of all, you know, sound checking and all that sort of stuff, trying to get support bands, and when again for them it's sort of like, you know, trying to make sure all their members could do it and everything like that. And nowadays trying to sort of provide like licenses and all that stuff, or getting licenses and submitting your lyrics, music, recordings, and passports and visas just so you can get a performance permit for one show. So it's gotten increasingly more complicated over time. But music scene, good people who are there and fully believe in what they're doing, and still got a lot of good friends from it.
When you were doing music, what was your expectation of your band?
I didn't really have, to begin with, much by way of expectations at all. It was like just a new place. I was excited to be able to say, wow, I've done a gig in Shanghai. But then, like, I think just gradually as the music scene is, although at one time, let's say it peaked around about, in my opinion, it peaked in quality and in the number of bands around about 2012. It was still, despite like having a reasonably large number of bands in both the expat and Chinese scene, you know, it was still relatively close knit. There wasn't really like rivalry per se and stuff like that. So it was quite easy to sort of network with people, and then, you know, and people were quite into this kind of like the sort of self-promotion, like being able to sort of do-it-yourself ethic of just setting up the shows, promoting them yourselves, and getting word out there on sort of DIY basis, and it helped bring like loads of people through. And I think just for me, I always like to have sort of a diverse range of acts on the bills, because I always thought if they're going to bring their followers, that's we're picking up followers too, and vice versa, where they get, you know, people who have come to see us would maybe come and see those guys in the future as well. And it was always quite eager to make sure that we had a mix of like sort of expat kind of bands and Chinese bands who wouldn't normally play together. And I always just thought it was a sort of like a win-win thing for everybody. So
yeah, I checked out some of the songs. There was one called Bai Fu Mei.
oh yeah, that wasn't mine. It was Bush, if he's listening. Yep, Bye for me, name check. What do you think?
It was interesting.
Very diplomatic.
I thought that song was about like a girls.
No.
Yeah.
It was more his homage to rich women. I mean, he tried to theme it and make the lyrics sensible and stuff, but it was more he, with the greatest respect to Bush, our bass player, he was very proud of learning Chinese and really wanted to integrate as much as he could.
Yes.
So when he learned something that sounded quite authentic and quite cool, he wanted to write a song about it. So that's where the inspiration really came from. It wasn't really, it wasn't punching down in any way about that. It was more his embrace of the culture.
I see. So when you guys like create write music, do you try to express certain things or whatever comes along?
It's usually just whatever comes along. It's like, yeah, I mean, Bush had more sort of meaningful lyrics than maybe what I would do. I would sort of more just, a lot of the lyrics to my songs wouldn't make any sense. They didn't really have, that's not necessarily true, but Bush certainly had much more understandable, fluid, kind of logical lyrics, and put more craft and effort into it than maybe I did, because I'm just not a writer in that way. My other band, Girls Like Mystery, they were much more ballady type songs. We had a song called the You and Me song, which was with the greatest of respect, an incredibly cheesy song with lyrics that went, I'm just going to do a slight rendition, you and me, just as happy as we can be. Just another day of fantasy. Just one more day for you and me. I'm making up these movements. But this I'm not making up. It was like, there was a little section where going the guitar. Ding, 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 and they go like this. Ding, 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 ding. I'm making it sound worse and look worse than it is, but it's every bit as cheesy. So for me, that song was just a step too cheesy, but it was popular
among
the people who regularly came to see Girls Like Mystery shows, which was mostly colleagues of all the other guys in the band all worked at the same school, and so it would usually be the same people coming. Kevin, if you're listening or watching this, please don't take that as me punching down on your craftsmanship. It was a great song, it was popular, but it was hell of a cheesy.
It's catchy.
It is catchy, and that was the selling point, I suppose.
Do you compare? I mean, speaking of that, a lot of popular songs out there are not the greatest ones.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
But they've got hooks and they've got catchy sort of lyrics that stick in your mind, and it's why they become popular. And if they're cheesy, then that's also why they're popular as well.
Exactly.
So if you're trying to be too it's funny, related to comedy, I'm watching the Bill Burr animated series F is for Family, and he's got this angsty teenage son who's really into pretentious sort of 70s prog rock music, all about wizards and ogres and trying to sort of get in touch with his soul. No one wants to hear that shit. And obviously it's satirized and made fun of in that show, but there's a point to be made. With good music, good music does not need to be pretentious.
Yes.
And if it is pretentious, I think in this day and age, people see right through it as well.
Exactly.
And people are just that wanker symbol for those who are not familiar. So we'd probably do that. If for anyone listening, I just gave the finger. So.
Have you guys ever had an album or?
Yeah. Each band recorded an album. So I've released is a very loose term of that word. Basically, I recorded with each band 4 albums, and we put them up on either Dolban or Bandcamp for free. So it's not quite released in the sense of we got a record company to do this. That's for the sake of clarity. This is what we did. No misleading information coming from me.
All right. So, are you happy with your music endeavor?
Yeah. I'd say I had a good run at it, and just needed a break from it. The wife wants me to form a band with her as well.
Oh, I didn't know Lucy.
duo.
Lucy does music.
Yeah, she sings. She's a very good vocalist and stuff.
Great.
But it's just it's maybe something that I need to get my finger out to actually go and start doing, basically. But yeah, I think it could be a cool proposition.
All right, that's exciting. All right, so do you guys still perform nowadays? Not at all.
I've done, the last time I was on stage for a music gig was October 2018. Yuentang here, they normally do a Halloween show. So what happens is bands in the scene, they will pick a band, a popular band, they will basically cover and dress up as for Halloween. So in past years, I've done Green Day, Blink-182, The Strokes, and The Offspring, whatever. So the last time was Smashing Pumpkins. I just put together 4 other people who were Smashing Pumpkins fans and did that. So that was always fun. But no, I haven't done any music since then. I've not done any live performances, but never say never. Never say never.
How do you feel about now doing music?
Kind of cool because, inevitably, a lot of the time, you'd end up in really antisocial hours. So, band practices sometimes for us, let's say start at 9 p.m, 3 hours, go till midnight, and then everybody, because with a couple of the bands, they were kind of married with families. This was their one release from home. They're oh, just stay. I've got work in the morning. Just stay. We don't get out much. Just have some more beers. And by the time it comes to 2 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, and I've got work at 7:30 a.m. that aspect I don't miss. Obviously, just hanging out with the boys and everything was great, but the antisocial aspects and also kind of lugging so much gear with you and stuff can also be a pain in trying to sort of maybe like if you're doing like sort of beer festival type gigs where maybe the equipment there is not fit for purpose. That's drag, but I really enjoyed like being able to travel around and see places in China which ordinarily we might not have actually gone to. Being able to spend those sorts of weekends with the guys in the band and stuff were great. Being able to network with people in these other cities and stuff, and obviously just being able to just kind of write stuff that you enjoy listening to as or trying to replicate it as close as possible was good fun. But obviously, there are just some people who I won't name who certainly take the whole musical process so seriously and stuff, and it's just kind of who do suck the fun out of it and stuff. It's like, what do you mean? Like, without naming names, when I'm doing the Smashing Pumpkins thing, 2 months in and stuff, and like, you need to practice more. I was like, but you're probably right, but you know what? I haven't really made it a priority. And looking at it, like, what? You haven't made this a priority? You haven't made this show that's 2 months' time that we only need really 2 weeks to practice for a priority? I mean, why aren't you asking the organizer what time we're doing our sound check at? Like, the person who was in this band, he's a good friend of mine, but I just knew that I couldn't be in a band with him, given this sort of real serious kind of sort of way he was taking it, even before the show, they'd get really anxious and nervous, and just calm down, XXYY, my baby band, was my favourite to do, not just because it was the music I enjoyed playing the most, but because we had the most fun with it, and we did take it seriously, but not to an extent where we're just like, why were you late for practice by 5 minutes kind of thing, it's so there's definitely elements of that in the music scene, and some people just need to shut the fuck up.
All right. Have you ever thought about doing music professionally?
Yes, but not as a musician. I thought about doing music promotion. So I brought over a touring sort of Scottish 90s act called Emma Pollock for a tour of China. She used to be in a band called the Delgados, which in the mid-90s were kind of having some moderate levels of success. They were nominated for like quite a prestigious Mercury Music Prize. They had their songs being done on there was some US drama series. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it will come back to me later, I'm sure. And they also had the music done in some Japanese anime stuff. So they were getting and they were working with like bands like Mogwai and people like that. So they were well connected, but they just kind of broke up. But we brought her over because she seemed open-minded and stuff about doing a tour of China. And this was like, for me, kind of like an experiment as well, because I'd gotten into music and into the live music scene, ingratiated myself a good bit, and I thought I discovered I was actually quite good at putting on the shows and promoting them and getting people through the door. And I thought, maybe you can see how this could go at a sort of in a grander scale, but to make it work as a business, you'd really have to be offering something else. So trying to try it out with someone who was coming over from Scotland, and what we did was, I'd seen this done before with my friends in the band Round Eye. They brought over a band and used some local musicians to make up for some of the members who couldn't come. So I did that with Emma. I got other people based here to be the backing band. So we arranged a tour of China, and yeah, it was very difficult to sort of make good money from this, because we're paying for Emma to come out, we're paying for her accommodation, flights, and basically sustenance. But then we're also trying to do the same for the guys in the band who've given up their time to come and do this tour and learn all the songs and everything. But when you're dealing with basically a 70 to 30% split, which sounds a lot for like ticket sales, so 70 going to the bands and 30 to the bar or the venue. By the time you divide this money, when you're sort of trying to give Emma, who's a professional musician who does this for a living, a sizable cut, there wasn't really too much left over when you're kind of splitting it between the other people, trying to cover the costs and whatever. And especially like we played in Henan and Zhengzhou, and it was this Wednesday night where it was like probably the heaviest rain I have ever seen. Probably the first example of flooding that I have seen in this city. And 9 people turned up for a venue that could hold 1,000 people. And it's like we were charging what, maybe we're trying to also factor in, this is not Shanghai, maybe charging say 60 kwai for a ticket where we could easily have charged maybe 100 in hindsight, but charging 60. 9 people turn up. That gig is a loss-making thing, even just for for like one hotel room, like for one member. So utterly lost cause. And you know, I knew this tour was going to be in for a loss when I put all my energy into promoting the Shanghai show, because I'm thinking to myself, right, if we can't promote Shanghai where we all are, where we know everybody, we've got the best connections with the media, the venues and websites, if we can't promote it here and make a success out of this one show here, what are the chances of us doing this in other cities where we're not that established? So I really did a heavy promotion, getting Smart Shanghai, Time Out, that Shanghai City Weekend to do magazine features and interviews, getting the blogs going, like kind of advertising it really well with posters and everything. And then we charged like 100 at the door. 120 people turn up. And the guy from Yuentang is like, gives me all this cash at the end. He's like, oh, you did it. Well done. This is like such a successful show. But I see this split, maybe like 4,500. I knew straight away this tour is going to be a loss-making thing. And so it's just too risky. And especially in this day and age where if you want to bring acts over, there's just an expectation that you're going to have to cover the costs for them to do this shit. You know, they're not going to pay for their flights. They're not going to expect to have to pay for like accommodation. You've got to fork this out. So you're maybe, it probably be difficult even to break even with this sort of thing as well. So unless you're just doing it as a kind of fun venture and doing it for fun and you're happy to take a loss, I just don't see it as being a sort of realistic proposition at all, career-wise. So
it's a very expensive hobby.
Yeah, and I'm glad I tried it. I'm glad I had that experience of doing it, but you know, just that doesn't need to be the kind of don't want to have to live hand to mouth to put on something like that,
Yeah. All right. Cool. Shall we talk about comedy?
Go for it. Yeah.
Yes. Then you moved from music to comedy. What got you into doing comedy?
Well, shout out to a good friend, Mike. We mentioned him already. He's a trumpet player in the band. I saw him starting to put videos of himself coming up with the old Kung Fu comedy. And this was like ages ago. I flirted with it before. When I saw him doing it, I kind of thought, well, he's having a go at doing it. I might as well have a go at it as well. And so he was running another mic at this old Eastern European bar called Block, it's not far from this place. It's long gone. And so I would kind of come down partly to sort of, that's how I met Leia as well. It's kind of, I went down there to partly to support them and everybody who was involved, like Evan Ames and Morgan Jackson now. She was Morgan Plummer at the time, and Colin Hanna and stuff. But yeah, I was really kind of just doing it just to sort of try it out and stuff. But I always kind of enjoyed doing it, but just like I was that involved in music that I sort of took over, but never sort of fully kind of abandoned the idea of doing it. It was just kind of like I just started to think of just some funny ideas after I took a long, good break from it, and then started to do it more regularly from about December 2016. So it was just more as a way of kind of trying to sort of use my brain in a different way. Not that, like, I just always thought maybe just, there was things that I would make myself laugh about different things. I thought, well, why not just try it out on stage? So.
All right. And now you are organizing shows that you don't perform very often these days, huh?
That's just because I want to, one, just get a better balance with like family life and stuff as well. And it's just I was doing a lot, trying to go to the mics as much as I could, but it's a difficult grind where, it's kind of like the mics happen obviously like in night time and whatever, where it's during the week, but it's kind of like the expectation really is that like if you really want to kind of do well, you should be trying to go to as many of the mics as you can. And I did try to do that, but it's just right now the kind of like sort of like the lifestyle that I'm trying to have as well, and it's not really compatible for me to do that. And also what I'm trying to do is try to come up with new and better material. I don't want to be kind of doing the same material that I've been doing the past 2 or 3 years, because some of that stuff, even some good jokes that I had that would get like good responses, are becoming less relevant now. So I had this joke that was about Paddington Bear and stuff. It was a comparison with like Paddington Bear, which would lead to this big punchline that was all about Brexit. So it was kind of like me basically kind of doing Paddington Bear. The idea came from like making fun of it. I was asked to do a gig at my work, and so got try and make jokes about international schools, and I came across the British School of Moscow, and my school was a co-teaching model, and I thought that couldn't work in Moscow. Try like say primary level kids, the British School of Moscow, and I'm getting all excited about the British teacher getting all excited about Paddington Bear because it's an iconic British thing and whatever, but like an utterly dismissive Russian co-teacher just being really cynical, pouring scorn on it. So it's a good premise and whatever. And then the punchline would always be, yes, Paddington is just a stupid British fantasy, just like Brexit negotiations. So not true, but it's not relevant anymore. Brexit's happened. I was told by someone, I should say this, and this is more topical, but I haven't done it on the stage because I'm worried that people would go, oh, you can't say that. Maybe I should say, Paddington is not real bear. Bear lives matter.
Oh wow!
I don't know if I should say that on stage, but I'm saying it on this podcast. It's nothing. It's just because it's topical, but I do think that maybe my Paddington Bear joke might get a few fuck yous from that. So I don't know. I need to think. I love doing it, but I need a different punchline. I can't use the Brexit line anymore. Brexit's happened. There's nothing we can do about it. And it's not really in the news anymore because of the coronavirus. So stuff like that, need to come up with new material. And yeah, I just and just the grind, just trying to get the right balance in that as well. So
I see. What about the comedy scene now? Is it the best as you've seen?
It's certainly a lot more inclusive. I would say. I'd say that like there's more collaboration and whatever, and there's no sort of like if you play this room you're not playing this room kind of mentality which existed before. But in terms of like we've lost a lot of comedians who have either moved away, gone other places, or now are just stuck outside the country. So but we're lucky to have a scene, because on other parts of the world comedy is just on ice at the moment. It's sort of frozen and nothing's happening with it. So we're lucky in that you can come to Shanghai and you can go up on the mic near enough every night of the week. It just still isn't really quite enough demand for that to be a viable thing. Let's say New York or London can have open mics at established clubs every night and there's going to be a packed audience, but here it's not really like that at all. And I would say that maybe we need many more comics for something like that to happen properly. So that I think another problem is that given we do have enough comics where we can vary up the bills each week, but not so many that the audiences wouldn't recognize the names and wouldn't expect to maybe hear some of the same material that they've heard before. I've had people I know come to me and like, I've been trying to promote the shows, and like, yeah, we'll leave it a few months before we come because these people are on again and I've heard all their jokes several times. So there needs to be more of a turnaround in people's material, I think, as well.
Do you think, generally speaking, the comics here are very productive in writing new jokes?
I'd say so. I mean, like they certainly go out to the mics and they grind hard and whatever. But I think that when I see them on the weekend shows, a lot of them tend to stick maybe like 80-90% of the stuff that they're doing on stage is stuff that they've been doing for quite a while now. And I know it's a sort of pragmatic approach and whatever, and I get that, and it's certainly not for me to criticise that. But I think part of this is also down to the fact that like there isn't really like professional comedians here in the sense. What I mean by that is that there's nobody really doing it here as a living. You know, there's certainly people who are putting in professional types of hours and working as hard as they can, but I guess there's more higher stakes if you are a professional comedian to constantly be kind of like you know, innovative with your stuff, be creative all the time, trying to write say 20-30 jokes a day possibly. I don't get the impression that that kind of level of sort of commitment can happen, mostly because people are tied up with full-time work and stuff as well. So, but yeah, there's certainly people who I think could be professionals, certainly people who I think can put on right now in the scene, people who I think can put on a successful Edinburgh Fringe show. There's certainly, like, take for example a guy like Ben Frank. He's prolific, he writes all the time, he obviously makes the time to do it. I would say that he turns out more material than anyone else, I would say, in this city.
Yeah, great. Now you're organizing shows. Do you plan to, you know, change anything in the scene, or do you have anything particular in mind why you're organizing shows?
It's still keeping me involved in the scene and stuff. I love comedy. I love kind of organizing things like this as well, and it's still like for me an opportunity to kind of at least showcase like good comedians, very good comedians, and obviously try to build up something, to do what I was hoping to try to have done in the music scene. But with comedy it would be easier because you're just dealing with one person. You know, in a band you're dealing with like 5 people potentially, and you know, that's 5 different flights, 5 different kind of like pieces of accommodation to deal with and stuff. Whereas with comedy, it's one person, and I feel as if with comedians, that's something that everybody benefits from as well. You can charge more for comedy too. With like, for some reason in music, if you were to charge 100 kwai for a show, people would just like, that's too expensive. You know, with comedy, people have no such qualms about that at all. I don't get why, but with live music, people are, oh, I don't know about paying 100 kwai to go and see a live band, even if it's one that we've brought out and spent a lot of money to bring. So, and also, yeah, like I think in terms of trying to do some things differently, I've got some ideas of types of themed shows I'd like to be able to run, but I don't want to just do showcase after showcase after showcase. Like for example, this Saturday at UN we've got like a July 4th themed showcase. It just happens to be we do shows on Saturday nights. What better way to kind of do a sort of theme thing when it's American Independence Day? We've got so many American comics. We've done roast battles and stuff, which are always fun and popular. I've had this idea of doing like a pun show. Some people kind of think funny about puns, but it's kind of like a pun show meets a gong show, where people just sort of, and also kind of without a net, where I think that if some random words come up and people try to riff and do puns for a bit and show kind of how clever they can be with wordplay, but if people think it's painful enough, they can get rid of them off the stage. You know, it's, some people love puns, some people hate them, but I do think there's a platform that we can do that with there as well. And I think as long as people know what they're signing up for when they're coming to see a show, then you know you can't complain. You know you're coming to a pun show. So there's loads and loads of different sort of things, like gong show as well. It's quite common in the UK for the established clubs as a barrier for entry to have new comics come up. It's like, okay, you've got 5 minutes in total. We'll give you 2 minutes free time. If if after those 2 minutes, right, that the audience don't like, they can hold up a card to say that if they don't like you. If 3 cards go up, within those 5 minutes you're off the stage. But in order to get on the club's books, you have to pass the gong. So it's like things like that which are kind of interactive and fun. I've done gong shows and failed horribly at them. It's like, I think even at one show in London at a club called Up the Creek, I'd mentioned I was from Scotland before, and I'm sure I heard someone in the audience even shout, send him back to Scotland, like that. It was brutal. And the cards went up. It was actually not a gong show, it was called a blackout show. Same idea, but the lights all went off rather than a gong going off. So that was, but they're brutal, they're humbling, but they can be good fun. And if you do well, I imagine the feeling of passing it is extremely rewarding as well. So.
All right, speaking of the fact that people are more willing to spend money on comedy than music events, do you think has something to do with the fact that there are so many recorded artists who are available online?
Maybe, but there's nothing that, I don't think anything can replace the live music experience though. And I think you can listen to recordings, but sometimes you don't see the whole thing from a recording. So like, take a local band, Round Eye, who everything's about their performance when you watch them, the energy that they bring, the presence and whatever, their interaction with the audience and everything like that. I like them. I like their music as well, but I much prefer to see them live. I wouldn't necessarily choose to listen to them for personal enjoyment, even though I like what they do. But I would much rather watch them live and appreciate their songs live like that as well. So
yeah, and also when people watch comedy, a lot of people start doing comedy because they think they're funnier than the comics. So it's like it's more accessible probably. Not a lot of people can think I can be a better musician.
Well, that's very true, and it's good that comedy does inspire people to be, even if that inspiration does come from that guy sucks. I could probably do better than him.
Yeah.
But it's a tough apprenticeship, at comedy, because you can do jokes that are going to land really well and get applause breaks in one room and whatever, then try it somewhere else and be met with utter silence.
Exactly.
So you just really never know how a show is going to go. And that's the thing about the gong show as well, like trying to do stuff that is your best material, that's gotten like good laughs and whatever. But a gong show is kind of like the early stages of America's Got Talent, where the viewers are tuning in to watch these auditions, and they're only tuning in to see how bad someone can be. And so they're all kind of like, the audience are drunk usually, they're all fired up, especially if they've got this opportunity to just tell someone to fuck off the stage. That's exciting to an audience in a real sort of Schadenfreude way. So yeah, comedy brings out that interesting angle, which I suppose music, you can't say, I could write a better song than that, I'm going to form a band and show that. It just doesn't really happen. I've never known that to happen.
Plus it's stressful. People do want to laugh.
They do, even if it is at your expense. Like I'm sure there's a few people like, that Scottish guy got him gonged off. Telling those silly jokes about Paddington Bear. So.
Great. So then you'll be putting on shows regularly.
Yeah. So we do them at the Camel, and we're trying to do an open mic soon. It's maybe could be at the Camel, but we're just exploring other possibilities as well.
It's a good turnout every time.
Yeah, and that's all just WeChat as well. We're not really kind of going too hard, but we've also built up kind of like a loyal audience. So, like, I've got a group chat where I put all the audience members into, and they come back. Like, and especially it's particularly important if I'm varying up the bills. That's why I do want to try to have maybe not just the same people. Obviously, you've got reliable people that you invite frequently on, but you also don't want to have them on every single time. So that's why, like in the mics and stuff, it's important that there are new people who, one, get the chance to see what it's like when you're in front of a real audience. Because the open mics, often it's just the comics. And so that's not true feedback. But it can be, if the comics don't laugh, it can feel demoralizing, and it's like, oh, I'm binning this shit, you know?
Yeah.
And like, but then if you do it in front of a real audience, and it's, you know, and they laugh, then it's cool. So with newer people, if they're doing okay at the mics, I'll usually sort of give them like 5 minutes to try out with a real sort of like paying audience to come and watch, and give them the chance. You know, there's no, all you have to be is good. There's back home, and I know this for sure, I follow this in the Scottish Comedy Forum, but there are cliques, and there's sort of people who just will never get a look in just because certain individuals don't like them, and or don't like their comedy. It doesn't matter to me if I personally don't like someone's comedy. If the audience likes it, that's what matters more. The audience is the main critic. The audience is judge, jury, and executioner, in my opinion. Obviously, we need to be sort of be able to vet this a bit, but if I can see quite clearly that the audience are laughing objectively to what someone is saying, rather than sort of taking a subjective attitude from what might be adopted by certain people who are just like defensive of their position, you know, give them the chance. And if, say, it doesn't go well, it's like, okay, you need to work at this more, come back, tidy up, edit, and we'll try again in, say, 3-4 months' time, that sort of thing. But always giving people the chance to improve, because I believe that people can improve.
That's great.
No one's a write-off to me. It's like, even if you're absolutely sucking and bombing every week at the open mic, you know, obviously you're not going to get on the stage right away at our place, but I believe that you can improve and you can learn and stuff. And if you're wanting to do that and you're starting to make that progress, then you deserve to be kind of recognized for that as well.
That's great. As a show organizer, you think this way. Shall we talk about private tutoring business a bit?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you ran a private tutoring center for a while.
Yeah, just 2 years. Yeah.
2 years, and then it was a happy ending.
Do you know, I've come to the word happy ending means something else through my time in this city. It was a satisfying ending, I would say. It was maybe, I think the first major mistake that I made was to try to come in. There is a huge market. First of all, there's a massive market for tutoring, and it's a very lucrative market. But the problem, I think my mistake, which I was trying to brand as my unique selling point, was we're going to offer a tuition service which is ran by fully qualified teachers. Sounds noble and everything, but you know, some of the sort of blind spots I didn't quite realize was that fully qualified teachers are also very busy people, and therefore, while you might be able to get like some very good people to be the tutors, one, they come at a premium, and second of all, it's like I say, they're very busy, so you know, they only maybe want to do one client. You're hoping maybe you can sort of put them with, say, 3 or 4 different people, and then you know, you're venturing into sort of other problems as well, where it's not strictly speaking, foreigners here are supposed to only have one job, and so can't take income from anything else, and so therefore that aspect runs into it as well. So the other competing sort of tuition businesses would use university students. So I was very cynical about this, because it was like, you know, I'm not saying that these people wouldn't do a good job or didn't know their stuff in certain areas, but I'd wonder when you'd look at some of the websites of these other tuition companies, and you would see people, oh, this guy, he can tutor maths, English, economics, geography, biology, computer science, anthropology. I'm kind of thinking, come on, you can't be expert level in all of those things, especially when you're doing a degree in art history or something like that. So that's kind of like what a lot of these other things offered. And I thought I saw a gap in the market in that way. And like I say, it was a noble intention, but because I'd sort of nailed my colours to the mast with this being my unique selling point, it was this, ironically, this USP which sort of backfired on me, because then that way, like I say, teachers like that come at a premium, and also pitch to foreigners who are notoriously cheap in this city. Like, foreigners want to talk you down and whatever, so you'd end up charging them just a standard hourly rate for them. So therefore, there wasn't really profit coming out of this at all. And so I ended up doing much of the tuition by myself for maths. And that's the thing as well, like in this country, the stereotype of Asians being really good at maths is 100% true. There is no demand in the Chinese market for maths tutors. And if there is, it's very, very niche and very, very few. It's English. And so I should have been focusing more on the English market, which I thought was saturated.
Oh.
But it's not. There's plenty of room here. But like that, I was focusing much on the kind of the academic stuff, like the high school curriculum, like say the IB program, the IGCSE program, AP, SAT, that sort of thing, where really the markets existed in English learning, like business English or kindergarten English and whatever, and then also maybe things like university college applications. So yeah, there is a demand for academic subjects to be tutors in, but really the people who are doing the other businesses using university students to do that probably in hindsight had the right idea, because for students, pay them less because they aren't that qualified. They haven't got the teaching certifications. So these companies could charge the same hourly rates to parents, take a cut and pay the students, say, well, I don't know, 60% of what that would be and stuff. And so therefore they're making like money for every client they're doing that. Whereas because I was trying to be too honest in this thing, it wasn't going to work out for me. So I just decided, like, after sort of kind of, for me personally, I was actually getting a lot of clients, but it meant also that I wanted ultimately to have small groups of people. I think that would have been a way forward. But again, I'd sort of nailed my sort of target market being foreigner expat clients, so like whose kids attend international schools, and all they wanted was the one-to-one, which therefore limited my time. And you try to suggest, could we maybe do this in small groups with people? Most of the time people didn't want that. So I kind of thought, and it does take time to grow a business and whatever, but I'd just gotten married and stuff, and and we wanted to kind of, I wanted to offer something better and trying to sort of clear some decks and stuff. And it was like, I don't want to have these antisocial hours doing one-on-ones, never been able to sort of go into doing like the groups that I hope to do, or maybe having to backtrack on this thing and being kind of like selling out a little bit and using university students. It was kind of more like, let's just go back into the classroom and just rethink this whole thing. And I'm glad I did that.
Exactly. For a lot of people in some parts of the world, they probably don't know much about private tutoring, but this is such a big thing in China, South Korea, Japan, right? Yeah. Like I did my master's thesis on this topic. Like we call it shadow education. It's like a shadow complementing the education that they have in their school. But there are actually a lot of problems in this business.
Well, yeah, and from the teacher's point of view, I can even see this too. So it's like, now I can see it from both sides. So you assign students some homework and they hand it back and they get like, they ace it and whatever. There's a chance that the tutor's done it all for them. And I know this from having done the tuition, where kids would just like, especially like the expat kids who have more of a sort of give up attitude. I would say less so than the sort of local, the Chinese students who've got a little bit more resilience. A lot of the time, some of these kids would just be like, I don't know how to do this. And you'd end up effectively like showing them how to do everything, which is not fair on them, because it gives them a false sense of confidence. If they submit that, they get a good score, but they know deep down it's not truly their own work. You can ask them do you understand this? Yeah, I understand. You want to kind of get them to show you how they do it, and then when they try to sort of explain the steps, you end up explaining it again sometimes. So it could be hard, but I enjoyed. There were some great kids that I've worked with over those years as well, who have gone on to do some good things and stuff as well. But yeah, I love the students that I currently have for the unnamed school that I can't name. But I love the kids that I work with. They're so good. A particular year level group I'm very much a fan of. I love them because they are actually very funny as well.
That's a very important part.
Yeah, I've got a good rapport with them because they've got such nice senses of humour as well. And I was on a school trip with them in Qingdao, and it was just a joy to work with them over that time. I got to know them better and stuff. But yeah, it's the class that I have, the advanced lot as well, the advanced class. Absolute joy to work with. So that's where I would say my skill set is more teaching the kind of the advanced levels and stuff, because the advanced level maths, I got a maths degree and everything, and that's what just makes me, I'm trying to even remember, it makes me tick. That's the expression I'm looking for. It makes me tick a little more.
Will you get back to the private tutoring business again?
Well, if I move home, I would have no choice but to pick up tuition, I think, because and we do hope to move to the UK. Cost of living will be higher, and if I have to take a job or teaching and whatever to begin with, I think if we were to live in a place like London, which has got like a good comedy scene, good music scene and whatever, and it's got a vibrancy which is similar to Shanghai, that's where we want to live. But London's super expensive. I got no choice but to probably pick up some tuition if I were to move back.
Will there be a market there?
Oh, there is a very, very good market in London. Yeah, there's very wealthy sort of families who put their kids into boarding schools and all that stuff, who are there and need tutors to kind of make sure the kids are doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. So it's plentiful in London. In fact, they have a weird thing they're called so-called super tutors, where basically they're just ordinary tutors, but what they do is they go with these very rich families and travel with them and stuff. It's like families that pay them ridiculous money, so the equivalent of per session, like 500, 600 British pounds, and the families have to constantly go on business trips and stuff, and they take the tutor with them and pay for all their expenses and everything like that. That's a gig I'd love to get. I fun fact, tried to ask Elton John if he wanted a tutor, because Elton John is retiring from music, and he mentioned in a BBC interview that while he's on the road in his final tour, he's going to take his children on the road, and he would just be educated by a tutor. So I tweeted him, "Hey Elton, if you need, I hear you from this article, you need a tutor. I will cut you a deal. I'll give you a mate rate, musician to musician." And I put it on Instagram, tagged him on Twitter. He never replied. But imagine that, being able to have been Elton John's tutor. I was like, hey, I can even throw in private guitar lessons for them as well. No reply. So Elton John, the offer still stands.
Probably he thought you were a stalker.
He probably did. He probably just thought He probably thought I was a bot, to be honest. I think if I'd got that message and I was Elton John, I'd have thought I was a bot as well. But I can assure you, Elton John, I am not a bot. I can even click the things in Google to recognise that they are traffic lights in front of me to indicate I am no bot, and I'm willing to offer you a mate rate. But we can talk about this, Elton, if you're listening. Sir Elton. And by the way, I loved Rocket Man. as well. Just put it in.
Oh, thank you for trusting our show to be heard by him.
We'll tag him. We'll make sure Elton John gets to hear this and he gets the kind of exact point. So, Elton, follow me, The Real Scottish Mike, on Twitter. Elton, you can follow me on Instagram, Mike Hurd Solo. We can even be friends on Facebook too, but I'm sure you've got that locked down so that only David Furnish, your husband, knows what that is, you know. So
That was fun. Years ago, when I was still working in Malaysia, I was working for an international school teaching IGCSE subjects, and I read an article. It was about like British kids doing terribly at IGCSE, and yeah, I remember vividly, like immigrant kids, like soared, like excelled in that exam, and so I'm like, does that have anything to do with the fact that they probably need private tutoring?
I think to be honest, it just comes down, I think, to just, in my opinion, it just comes down to sort of like the work ethics and whatever as well. I think, certain cultures, like maths is really held in high regard in, say, Indian cultures, Chinese cultures, Korean, Japanese, Pakistani cultures and stuff. And whereas I guess maybe in Western cultures are maybe a lot more ambivalent about it. And it's like, but it is an important subject to go for, but it's just cultural in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. That's well explained based on your observation from your students, I guess.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've discussed a lot of things.
It has been, yeah.
Yeah, Mike. So, final two questions. How has your experience living in China shaped you?
For the better, I'd say it's made me much more open-minded and stuff. In fact, I think living in China actually made me sort of like, I would say, like in the terms of my political persuasions, made me more sort of like liberal-minded and more sort of socially progressive. I think that's a combination of meeting loads of people from loads of different cultures as well that kind of made me sort of become a lot more sort of open-minded like that. But I also think it's also just down to sort of gaining more life experience as well. I think here there's a high degree of optimism. There's a sort of very much in Shanghai a can-do attitude. Whereas I think before I left, there was just like, people, if you say, I'm going to travel, why would you want to go to China? Stuff like that. Like, as if everything just was so sort of negative. I think there's really, I think just like a parochial attitude that exists, where I live, where, that's where they think the center of the universe is, like in EK. And it's like there's more to the world. I'm not saying everybody is like that from there, but certainly in my experiences of meeting certain people, like the idea of wanting to travel and go to another place, like, why would you want to go to China when you can go to Spain? Is like, the idea would just be rubbish. China is just, they don't know anything about it. That's the problem. So now all they know about it is the coronavirus, which is shameful. So the coronavirus is shameful, but it's shameful that that's all they know, is to clarify just what I meant by that. So yeah, it's made me, coming here has made me more open-minded. It's made me more sort of, I would describe myself as a global citizen as a result of having lived here.
Oh, that's good. That's what we've been teaching our students to become.
I think that's also comes from working in an international school too, where like they want to kind of promote global citizenship and understanding of all the cultures in the world and all sorts of, and sort of like opening your mind to a variety of reasons as to why things are the way they are, rather than just sort of focusing on just saying one idea, so.
Exactly. And the next one is a job interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Literally, I could see myself back home. I've been here, by the time that I'm done with the next contract, that would be in total 14 years. So we do want to eventually move back to the UK. I personally feel I just need to reattach myself to my culture for a bit, because I feel as if I feel as if in some ways I'm losing my ability to relate to people from back home. I don't mean that in a kind of arrogant or egocentric way. I just feel as if that maybe there's a lot of things that have happened back home. Like I missed, for example, the Scottish independence movement. I observed it from afar, but I wasn't there to see it. I wasn't there to experience what life has been like under like an austerity Tory government in the UK, and then this whole Brexit divide with people. So I kind of feel there's a lot of societal changes that have happened back home that I've not been present for. A lot of sort of cultural changes in terms of like what people watch on TV and music and stuff as well. I sort of think I need to get back to that before I become totally foreign to it as well. So I'm well aware of this stuff, and it's kind of like, yeah, and so yeah, that's, I see myself 5 years, maybe working at school, still doing comedy, but hopefully by that stage, kind of been able to get stage time in some of the sort of established clubs in the UK and stuff. Still coming back here. Got a Chinese wife after all. We've got roots here. China is a second home, and even when we leave and maybe live somewhere else, we'll be here all the time. So we'll be back probably. I go home at least 2 or 3 times a year, so I can't see why I wouldn't be coming here at least 2 or 3 times a year. So you'll still see me around.
That's good news.
For better or for worse. So.
That'd be...
Yeah, you're still a global citizen.
There we go.
All right. With that, we're gonna end our show. Yeah.
Thank
to
you.
be a good global citizen. Yeah, that's the message. All right.
Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
you,
you.
Mike.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
watching.
Bye.